So by doing all of that, we enter into this paradox of trust, because basically we keep disappointing people, but we still need their trust. Otherwise, they will take away our ability to lead. So they trust us in order to let us lead, and they do trust you only when you fulfill their expectations for service. But to lead adaptively requires raising questions that conflict with their expectations, that will push them out of their comfort zone. So that risks their trust. And to lead adaptively, you need to tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. So that will further break their trust. So how will you be able to lead long term if they stop trusting you and stop allowing you to lead? So here are a few thoughts. One is to focus on the vision and the purpose and expected work. A really key concept here is purpose. People need something to get them up in the morning, something to get them to be willing to stay out of their comfort zone. The word purpose actually comes from the Latin root pur, P-U-R, which means fire, and it talks about this fire in the belly, the thing that gets you to see a really important future, something bigger than you, something that is critical to your society, to your organization, to something that is really meaningful to you. And it's by focusing on that that you can get people to be willing to accept losses that they wouldn't normally be willing to accept. You also have to disappoint them at a rate they can withstand. You can't tell them, to change who they are completely and immediately. You have to take small steps and keep measuring the heat, keep getting that feedback and assessing, have I pushed them over their limit of tolerance, or are they still in the range of productive disequilibrium? And third, use that series of small experiments, because small experiments, when they fail or cause trouble, the trouble is manageable and you can use that as data to adjust. But if you have a huge experiment and it fails, that's the end of it. Your role is done and your credibility is gone. So there's certainly times when you have to take on a large experiment, and that comes with large risk. But if you are able to break it down into small steps, you should definitely look into doing that. Okay, and now let's talk a little bit about the work avoidance mechanisms that people use to avoid dealing with adaptive work. So if you were to raise an issue with people and say, and try to identify a need for adaptive work, you are likely to see some of this, and I'm sure you've seen these a lot before in your organizational setting. One is externalizing the enemy, looking for someone outside the organization to be an enemy that allows people to bring in the us versus them paradigm, and that allows us, the people within the group, to coalesce and strengthen their bonds and not have to deal with the issue. It's much easier to deal with an outside enemy that everyone agrees on and that doesn't require me to change who I am. People tend to attack authority, especially if that authority figure is trying to tell them that they need to make changes. It's much easier to say, no, you, the authority figure, don't know what you're talking about, than it is to accept that they need to make changes. Killing the messenger, so even if it's not the authority figure who's asking for the changes to be made, it's much easier to sort of politically assassinate the person who's bringing the message than deal with the message itself. So they'll tend to criticize whoever is raising the issue for things that have nothing to do with the issue itself. They might question that person's loyalty to the organization, or they might question their hidden agenda, or might criticize him or her for not being a pious person, without actually trying to deal with the message. Because even if that person has an agenda, a different agenda, the issues they're raising might still be valuable and real issues that we have to address. But by killing the messenger, quote unquote, we avoid dealing with the issue at all, and just say that anything that comes out of the mouth of this particular person or this faction is suspect. Therefore, we're just not going to listen to it. Scapegoating, finding someone to blame. So instead of accepting that the responsibility is mine and I have to go through a change process, blaming someone else for for the challenge that we're facing now, and saying it's their fault, this isn't really a problem that I have to address because it's someone else who screwed up. Defining the problem to fit the current competence. So rather than saying, we don't actually have the right skill sets here, and we have to develop those, and those include a change in values. Changing the discussion to say, no, the problem isn't that big. Let's just see what we can do with our existing competencies and skills and values, and that's going to be good enough. Passing the buck, hiring consultants, or setting up a committee to deal with the issue, or handing it over to other stakeholders is a great way to avoid dealing with the issue. The majority of stakeholders can stop worrying about it, put it in someone else's lap, and basically turn it into either a technical issue, a technical solution that consultants can pull together, or give it to a committee that will spend months studying it and not come up with actionable items, or pass it on to yet another committee that will spend more months, and the issue eventually dies, or at least keep kicking the can down the road without ever having to really deal with it. Denial, it's a very straightforward thing. Nope, you're telling me I need to change. No, I don't think that's true. We don't really have an adaptive problem at all. Let's just keep moving on. Or proxy fights. Instead of addressing the real issue, which is very deep and painful to deal with, we'll tend to find smaller things to fight about, and not actually deal with the issue at all, because the smaller fights are things that we can win without having to change who we are. So we'll focus on those, and when we win, we'll say, oh, good, we just had a big win, let's not worry about the deeper issues anymore. Now, in summary, there are 7 tasks for in adaptive leadership that every leader will have to go through. One is to identify the adaptive challenge. The second is to understand the values and losses at stake. Understand that people have legitimate losses at stake, that they're not just being difficult by standing in the way of progress and change. They are truly suffering because the demand on them to change is too much to bear. So I'm trying to understand what it is that they are losing in their sense of identity, and admitting that, recognizing it publicly, acknowledging it publicly, is very helpful in gaining credibility with the other stakeholders. Orchestrating conflicts to raise the disequilibrium. Sometimes you have to bring conflict to the forefront, or even create conflict, in order for the issue to become big enough that people are forced to deal with it. Disciplining attention, making sure that that work avoidance mechanisms don't end up ignoring the issue. So always bringing the issue back to the table. And developing responsibility, pushing the responsibility back on the people, so that they feel empowered, and they feel that they understand that it is their work that needs to happen, that you can't do the work for them. and regulating the disequilibrium that we talked about, so making sure that people are uncomfortable enough that they will engage with the adaptive process and with the work that needs to be done, but that they're not so uncomfortable that no more productive work is happening. And finally, infusing the work with meaning. This goes back to the purpose. Giving people a greater purpose to believe in, and continuously keeping that purpose alive, to make sure that they really have a reason to keep going through what is very painful work. So these are the main tasks of adaptive leadership, and I will leave you with just a few quick thoughts on how to rely on this framework to live a life of continuous leadership. So to have an impact every day beyond your normal day. Think about living by the 4 C's. The first is curiosity. Always try to figure out why people are behaving a certain way, why an organization is doing what it's doing. Not why as in, what are the marching orders or what are they trying to accomplish, but what are the values that are behind this? What is the history that has led a faction to become who they are today and to do things a certain way? And be courageous. Ask them directly. Ask the questions, ask the difficult questions that will help you understand and will help others understand, and also take some risks in your daily life, because you can't have an impact on the world around you if you're not doing something that's dangerous. Going about our daily business means we are comfortable, everything is okay, everything will stay the same. If you want to really have affect change, you have to take on some courageous risks, and just make sure they're manageable risks. Be creative. Try to reach out to people who you don't normally reach out to, people from totally different backgrounds, from different domains, and ask them for feedback, ask them for help. See if that can help you develop a new and different ways of doing things. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, be compassionate in dealing with them, especially with people who seem to be just standing in the way. People who seem to be who are doing things that you're not happy with. Try to understand where they're coming from. Try to be compassionate with them, and know that they are not trying to be difficult for the sake of being difficult, but there is truly something deep within them that is driving them to behave a certain way. Usually it is something related to fear of losing faith or losing material goods that are important to them, to their families. So try to see things from their point of view a bit more. And that doesn't mean agreeing with them or accepting what their way of doing things, but it will help you understanding what they are truly afraid of. And why they are afraid of it will help you interact with them and will help you address their needs a lot more and a lot more productively than if you simply write them off as people who are standing in the way or who don't get it, etc. And thank you very much for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.